Most of us believe we are our thoughts. We assume the voice in the mind is who we are. But what if the mind itself is something far more spacious? The mind, your mind, my mind, is a place in which thoughts exist. A subtle, high vibrational field of energy in which thoughts are capable of arising. They are not the mind itself. They exist within the mind, formed from the very substance of that field. And if this is true, then a profound question emerges. Who is the one who is observing the thoughts? Welcome to Stories. I'm your host, Delia Quigley. Today we enter the landscape of the mental body, the mysterious inner world where thoughts appear, disappear, and shape the way we experience life. In this episode, I explore this question and many others through a rich and wide-ranging conversation with Jacky Fernandez. Jacky is a mental health counselor specializing in mindfulness, addictions, grief, depression, anxiety, and life transitions. She is also a Zen teacher in the White Plum lineage. Together we explore the nature of thinking, meditation, awareness, emotional patterns, addiction, and the possibility of cultivating a different relationship with your mind. Rather than trying to control thought, what happens when we learn to witness it? Rather than fighting the mind, what happens when we understand its nature? Today's conversation is an invitation to step back, to witness, and to listen inwardly. Because what is running you may not be what you think. Welcome, Jacky Fernandez. When I was considering who to ask to speak on the mental body, there was just one person I knew who was really working to explore and encompass all these different aspects of the mental body. So you're working with addiction, you're working with depression, you're working with, so many aspects as a counselor. And then you also have the Moon Cloud Zendo, in which you are a sensei and a Zen teacher, and you teach mindfulness. So here's my, I'm going to get a question right out the door here.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So in your counseling, so I know you're bringing your clients into an awareness of how meditation can support them. How do you approach all these different mental imbalances with your meditation practice or teaching them about a meditation practice?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first things we want to do is get still, and some people can't do that. So we have to meet people where they are. So if someone can't get still, then maybe we want to walk, we do something like yoga, just start to slow down. And we want to start to be able to see the thoughts that we have, because the thoughts that we have are often the genesis of a lot of our issues. Unless it's a biological depression, if it's a situational depression, most likely our thoughts, a rumination is contributing. Anxiety, thoughts of worry, projecting into the future. In depression, usually ruminating on the past. We get lost in our thoughts, and we're not in our bodies. We're not in our, our mind is in our body, and we need to come into the body to start to look at the mind. So I start with tiny little stillnesses, just bringing someone into the awareness of their feet on the floor, into the feeling of the couch beneath their body, and breathing, connecting with the breath. Maybe listening. Hearing trees, wind, birds, just creating a sense of stillness and presence.
And when they come to you first, so they come in and you discern what it is that, not diagnose, but in the conversation, discern what it is that's
we take a history, ask what's bothering somebody, try to figure out what brought you into counseling? Why are you here? It's usually some suffering of some kind, right?
Yeah, right.
wanting things to be different than they are, not accepting what's happening in their lives. And so, we start there. Where are you?
Yeah, where are you in this moment?
Yeah. And most people are not here, right? They're somewhere else.
Right.
And
Okay. So, and is that different than someone coming in with the addictive disorder or addiction?
yeah, addiction is usually, compounds any other problem. So where you see addiction, you're probably also seeing depression, anxiety, trauma, most likely trauma. So it's a little more complicated. Yeah. And, addiction is not dealing with what is, it's trying to escape. So we have many layers to get through there before we could get anywhere near stillness, I think.
So in yoga, they call it the monkey mind, but I've also heard it referred to in Buddhism as the monkey mind.
Yes.
Yoga takes it a little further and calls it the drunken monkey mind.
That's good.
So what does that mean? What does it mean to have a monkey mind?
It means freight train brain, constant thinking, constant ruminating, looking for distractions everywhere, having a very hard time realizing that the thoughts aren't reality. Thoughts aren't the world.
Okay, so we're talking about the mental body,
Yes.
right? Okay, so what is it about our minds that is so difficult to keep them still? Is it all the external stimulus that we've created in the world, or is this just from the beginning of time?
I think it's from the beginning of time, but I certainly think it's worse. We have so many distractions with our phone, with social media, with television, with news. There's just so much to distract us from, in addition to our own thoughts. Then we have other people's thoughts in our minds. And it can be, and I think in the West, we're so attached to our intellect. We're so attached to thinking. We believe that our thoughts are the world. I think, therefore I am,
Right.
And we don't realize that the thoughts are largely not true. Most often when we're thinking things based on conditioning, the way we have learned to see things instead of the way things are. So when we slow down thoughts, we have an opportunity to see how things actually are.
So this podcast is called Stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love to hear the stories of women. How did you come into this work? Right? You came into these Zen, right? Buddhist sits
Mm-hmm.
Before you became a counselor. Is that correct? Could you tell us your story?
Sure. I actually had some trauma in my early years. And in order to cope with that trauma, I came from a British family, so it was very much not dealing with things to some degree. And so my trauma was not dealt with. And so I turned to alcohol and drugs. It was the 70s, so there was an abundance of alcohol and drugs at the time. And I had developed an alcohol problem by the time I was 30, it was fairly significant. In my effort to avoid my trauma, I was using substances. And so I got sober. And when I got sober, I became very interested in meditation. About a couple of years into my sobriety, I realized I was still unhappy, and I was actually working in publishing, and I ran into some Buddhist books, and I started to read about suffering, and I became interested in Zen. And so in my early 30s, I started sitting Zen, became a part of Zen group, found a Zen teacher, and became very interested in this path. And as I continued on, I worked in the community in my recovery. I met women. I worked as a mentor to many women. And one of another fellow traveler on the sober path told me that I would make a really great counselor. And he worked in a local rehab. It was called Alina Lodge, and it was a rehab that dealt with addicts who are chronic relapsers. And he suggested that I might want to go back to school. And what happened was I was given a sum of money that enabled me to go back to grad school. And I was very fortunate and very grateful. And I went back to grad school, and I became a licensed professional counselor. And my interest in counseling really became focused on how meditation could help. And so I started doing a lot of research and working with the effects of meditation on mental health. And eventually took a deep dive into mindfulness and Zen and mental health, and opened the counseling and mindfulness group with my partner, Dan Massey, and started doing a lot of mindfulness work. And Zen is my personal practice.
Okay, so yes, let's take a moment because we hear about mindfulness meditation and
Yes.
we hear about Zen meditation. We hear about yoga meditation. I mean, there's so many different ways now to
Mhm.
meditate,
Yes.
right? And to me, it's personal. You find what works for you, I guess. I mean, but there's also ones that really don't work.
Yeah.
So, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. So how would you advise people? Because Zen's pretty tough.
It is tough. And so there's many different approaches to meditation. It can be very casual, it can be very serious, very committed. And I think it's people finding their own levels and see what opens up for them. So in my therapy practice, we use mindfulness for mental health, basically. So we meet people where they are, and it can be as little or as deep as they want to go. We often run 8-week groups, just teaching people basic mindfulness skills, and some people stay and continue to come to weekly groups.
So please be a little more specific on mindfulness. I mean, it's becoming that kind of catch-all word, be
Yes.
mindful. All right. So okay, let's go a
Mindfulness.
little deeper.
Okay, mindfulness is paying attention to what's happening in the present moment with no judgment and some compassion, some open-heartedness. So you could think, well, it sounds like a sniper, except for the compassion, a compassionate awareness piece. So a sniper can pay incredible attention to what's happening in the present moment, but it's not with this open-heartedness. It's very focused on a specific task. So mindfulness, so we could have mindfulness of breath, paying attention to the breath in our body, coming back to the breath over and over. But we could also do mindfulness of sound. We're just listening. And then when our mind wants to go to labeling, we just go back to pure listening. We could mindfully walk, paying attention to our footsteps. And so with things like, depending on someone has ADHD, you might want to get them to try and walk, if they have some hyperactivity in their body and can't sit still, or maybe something like gentle stretching yoga.
So is this a way to retrain the brain?
It is. So, we pay so much attention to our bodies, how they look, how fit we are, and very little attention to our mind. So, we pay more attention to our cars and take better care of our cars than we do our own minds. And I think it's very important to have good mental hygiene, to work with your own mind, be able to even notice what you're thinking when you're thinking it, which is transformative because sometimes we notice what we're thinking is not true.
So do you notice how the mental body or the way the mind works affects the physical and the energetic bodies? In-
Absolutely. Yeah. Mhm.
okay, could you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, if I'm thinking anxious thoughts about the future, worried that I won't be able to pay my mortgage, the tension usually rises in my body. And sometimes it's hard to tell which comes first, right? The tension in your body can cause thoughts, and the thoughts can cause tension in the body. I used to have, when I was younger, I had terrible irritable bowel syndrome, and when I started meditating, when I got clear, all of these things cleared up.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh,
the stress
interesting.
reduced a lot of the somatic symptoms that I had reduced.
Okay, and how about energy?
Well, it's interesting. I do a lot of retreats, and sometimes on the first day of retreat, you start to feel exhausted. And then as your mind clears, you have this unlimited energy. So it's amazing. 4 or 5 days into retreat, I can't sleep and I'm not tired. And I just feel so energetic. So I think absolutely a clear mind, a free mind, just is such a beautiful energy to carry around.
So in this retreat, are you sitting? Is this the whole time you're sitting in meditation?
Yeah, it would be often sitting, say 25, 30 minutes at a time, interspersed with walking meditation, perhaps a work practice, breaks for meals. But it's 12 to 15 hours of seated meditation a day. And it's exhausting and it takes a while to build up to that, but it is absolutely freeing. Yeah.
And to prepare for it, do you do anything for the physical body, like, yoga? Well, that's part of what yoga poses are about, is to prepare the lungs to be able to breathe deeper and to prepare the body to be able to sit in meditation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I stretch, I walk, I take care of my body. I do gentle yoga. Uh, and because you can get stiff also sitting so long. So we often have a yoga break or a stretching break within a retreat as well. And retreats take a while to work up to. It's just you can never go on retreat or you can go on retreat several times a year, whatever works for you.
How about food to feed the mind?
Absolutely. Actually, I learned that from you many, many years ago.
Ooh,
I was doing a body scan with you, and I think at the time I was on I was on amitriptyline, which was for nerves and depression. I had a nerve pain issue, and I had done a body cleanse with you, not a body scan, a body
yeah.
cleanse with you. It was your wonderful book on body cleanses, and I wasn't losing weight over the body cleanse, and everybody else was. And you actually said to me, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Of course." And you said, "Are you on any psychotropic medications?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm on the amitriptyline." And you said, "Would you be willing to go off the medication to see what happens and see if this weight started to move?" And I went off the image. Oh no, it wasn't weight. It was weight and depression. It was this mood I was having. And you said, go off it. So I went off it, and we redid the body cleanse, and the depression left. And I never went back. I haven't been on medication since that time. It was probably I don't know, 30 years ago.
Yeah, 30 years at least.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was amazing.
And I also remember, now that you've said that, I also remember, I think it was because I think it was supplements or something else. And I said, you're a small woman, cut everything in half.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't take the full dose, because they're just generally prescribing what they would do
Men.
for a man
Right.
and then for a little gal like you. And and that never made sense to me. I said, girls, just cut it, you know?
No,
Oh,
it was so
good.
helpful. And I actually still use that story today with my clients. The most overprescribed medication for depression is food. People use food for depression. And the most underprescribed is exercise. So before any medication, I would ask people to look at what they're eating and look at how they're moving.
And also alcohol,
Exactly. Yes.
right? For depression, but alcohol can make you more depressed.
Yes. It's a
Right.
depressant. Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
depressant.
Yeah.
And yet people, for that moment, they have a little ease, and then it just crashes them. A lot of the stimulants, coffee, chocolate, eat too much of it, it's just gonna knock you down.
Absolutely. And what's really important too, I think, is it's never too late to adjust. So sometimes, we start to feel good. This happens all the time with people. They start to feel great. They start to feel less depressed. They're more energetic. And so they start doing what they used to do because they miss it. And then we start eating poorly. We stop exercising. We maybe have a few glasses of wine again, and then all of it comes back. So everything we're doing is also in the day, it's in this day that we have to do it. We don't sort of build up this collective where we could go back to our old ways and not have any impact from that.
Okay, so that's a really good point, because and it's kind of this we talk about the ego in terms of, we get to this point of feeling really great, and then we like, oh, okay, I can go back and I can handle another drink, or I could handle, overeating this one time. And it's like this little voice is like encouraging that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a little
Yeah,
angel
yeah, you
devil going on,
can.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, little devil.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This time it'll be fine.
yeah, it's okay. Go ahead. This time it'll fine. This time you can handle it,
Yeah, and I
right?
sometimes think, we get the seasonal affective disorder, which is sad, which is a real thing, but it also happens to come after the holidays, where a lot of people are eating a lot of sugar and stuff that's not so good for them, staying up later, not resting, not exercising. So it's interesting. I think these forces really contribute to making winter hard for people. But when you give these things up, it's just beautiful.
It's beautiful. And I think coming off of the excess in the holidays, and even if you just start, okay, I'm just going to cut not some of it, because I'm not partying, but you have to detox. And I think people don't realize the effects of detoxifying from the excess.
Powerful.
Really powerful, right? Okay, so then they've been away from you and they come back to meditation, and they come to sit, and they haven't been sitting for a while. Everybody's squirming around.
Yeah, usually sore, right? So
Really sore.
and can get excited.
Right, exactly. So how do you address that with them?
Really pointing out, noticing how you feel, noticing how you might have felt before, noticing how you're feeling now, noticing the conditions that caused how you're feeling. I like to point out everything arises in conditions, and we have a lot of control over certain conditions. We can control what we eat, who we spend time with, what we're doing physically, mentally, spiritually, a lot of the time. And these conditions are very important. So when someone comes back and they all of a sudden it's harder to sit still, all of a sudden I feel a little depressed, I feel bloated, I'm not happy, noticing the conditions that gave rise to those things and that we can change them. So I like to be empowering with this with clients. We have a lot of control. We don't have control over the world. We see, the world is on fire right now. It can be very difficult, but we can control our small world surrounding us and our bodies and work on our minds and our bodies and our emotions.
Okay, but let's take that in from a different angle, okay? And that is loving ourselves.
Yeah.
So, all right. So this is a really huge topic to ask people who now are coming back bloated and sore and, hungover and, right? And they had a fight in the family dynamic or whatever. And now they're beating themselves up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And maybe this is, it's a core issue that they never loved themselves because of trauma in their childhood. All right. So this goes deep now, Jacky. So where do you go? I mean, it's kind of like these small steps you're talking about are just a surface steps to work your way gradually down the stairway, to these deeper issues. Is that what happens?
Yeah, certainly. In the West, I remember the Dalai Lama, I think when he first came over here, someone mentioned hating themselves. And the Dalai Lama said something like, "What are you talking about?" Never had heard about self-hatred and was amazed by it, But it seems to be a particularly Western construct, self-hatred. And
Oh,
we
is it?
celebrate it with women, we sort of, oh, I'm so fat. And, we put ourselves down often. So noticing, first of all, we have to notice how we treat ourselves. And that we bring some mindful awareness to that. And then I just have people try and soften around that experience, even like softening the body, noticing how it makes them feel, and start to dial into the self-talk that we have. And then we have mindful self-compassion practices, which are very effective, but very uncomfortable. And I think the most important thing with people is like lifting weights. You don't expect to go to the gym and start lifting your max weight immediately. You don't expect to run 13 miles out of the gate. And the same is with any kind of change like this. It's slow and needs some consistency. And so when we initially try and work with a self-compassion practice, which is softening toward ourselves, our own experience, perhaps giving ourselves a gesture of compassion. I'm putting my hands on my heart at the moment. Putting your hands on your skin right above your breastbone. And it's sort of like a feeling your heart and softening towards your own experience. These things don't work immediately. They start to feel, someone might feel silly, or they might feel the opposite. They might feel uncomfortable, angry. The self-hatred might arise. And we just do this over and over, just small gestures of self-compassion, sort of holding your own arms, rubbing your legs. And then for compassion for ourselves, it's not thinking, because if we tend toward negative thinking about ourselves, if we try and meet that with positivity, it usually strengthens the negativity. So positive affirmations only work with people who tend to think positively about themselves. They don't often work with people who don't. So we're not going to go to thoughts. We're going to go to that midbrain activity, which is usually gesture. So warmth, if you want to be compassionate, you can take, like I always have a pashmina or scarf, you wrap yourself up, have a cup of tea, a warm cup of tea, which I have right here with me. You might have a little blanket, sit by a fire, soften your body, caress yourself gently, put on some lotion. You're really going to what you would do with a baby. You swaddle a baby, you talk to a baby gently. You're very gentle with a baby. These are the kind of compassionate actions we want to take toward ourselves. And as you know from yoga, when the body moves, the mind can follow.
Right. No, that's interesting. I was going to ask you that question about affirmations, and maybe affirmations versus, I don't know if that's the word, a mantra.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because in Zen you don't do a mantra, do you? No, it's the counting or.
Well, Zen, we have koan practice, that's Koan, which sometimes you can repeat a phrase or a word, but it's more that that's about a single point of focus. So whether it's your breath or a mantra, we're getting to concentrating on a single point, which increases the joriki, we would say in Zen, the power, the energy of that single point of focus in your body, which allows for insight. So.
And an affirmation is just words that are supposed to make you feel good about yourself.
Yes, but I suppose if you used an affirmation more like a mantra, you didn't attach to the meaning, but we're just focused on the words, it could be very helpful. But when we're saying, I'm pretty, and we look in the mirror and we don't think we are, usually we don't suddenly become pretty to ourselves, right?
Right. Or I love you, looking in the mirror and say, that's what is it, pasted up on the mirror, that I love you.
Yeah.
And yet we haven't really dealt with the trauma that, right, goes along with, not loving yourself.
Yeah. And the deep existential questions, who is it that is not lovable? Who is it that is lovable?
Right. Which is one of my favorite questions is, who am I? Who asks?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Right, exactly. And looking at those two, right?
Yeah. Really don't try to answer it.
Right, exactly.
Just look at those two
Let's
and
look
just
at
let
it.
it arrive. Yeah, exactly. And that's what everybody's going to want to try and answer it. It's like,
Yeah. And maybe you notice the mind can go a little blank when you have those confounding questions.
right. Because Cohen, so what's a Cohen that really, I don't know, befuddled you or spoke to you, a Zen Cohen?
Most of the Zen koans befuddle you initially.
I know, right?
That's their point. They actually frustrate the minds because you can't use your intellect to answer them. You have to go deeper into another part of yourself and your awareness in order to answer it. So it's actually getting away from discursive thinking that we usually engage in.
Is there one that you want to share?
Oh, there's so many. There's one that I love that goes, all branches of the bright coral embrace the moon, which is a beautiful image that people could work with. That the picturing coral under a blue sea, with its arms reaching up and the moon shining brightly. Each branch of the coral embraces the bright moon.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this, and maybe I shouldn't even say it, but it was one of the sun setting as the moon rises, caught between the sun setting and the moon rising. It was interesting because one day I had just read that koan, and I went out to the beach with some friends of mine, and I looked up and the sun was setting and the moon was rising. And I was like, I know, it's beautiful. It was just in one of those moments where caught between the two.
Yeah.
I think I'm still trying to figure out that koan, but whatever.
And just that experience, that
Yes,
moment. Yeah, right.
that moment, exactly. So, all right, so tell me about our culture today and what you're seeing in terms of what's happening to people. And I'm just going to throw a few things in, because not only are you dealing with the addictions of pleasure and pain, but you're also dealing with people who are on a lot of medications.
We are, yeah. And there's an enormous impact of opinion news that's riling up this divisiveness that is causing so much harm and so much discontent and unhappiness, So people are very attached to views. Right?
They're very attached views. And yet, so it's really interesting to see the yin and the yang with what's happening in Minnesota. And then I've been following, because they've come through my neighborhood, these Buddhist monks who are walking.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So here they are doing 2,300 mile through the South. And they specifically picked towns that were wounded.
Mm.
The South has some serious history. Okay. And thousands of people are turning up and crying and flowers. And, and you really see this is not, they're educated America, but also the rural America, the Christian America coming forward. It's really amazing to see what's happening. So what is that we're seeking mentally,
Mhm.
this peace? How do you work with that?
Well, I think it's instinctive. I think we know on some level that things aren't right and that we're missing something. And when we get still, I think we start to tap into that sense of wholeness that we feel like we're missing. And I think the monks represent that. They're so authentic. They've done this work and they're so authentically themselves. They accept the world as it is and themselves as they are, and they're just walking and they're happy. And we crave that so much because we're so unhappy. And face it, we have everything. With all of this going on, when it feels like our country could literally collapse, I think we have had everything. We are so rich in everything. And look, we would risk it. Could lose it. And it's so sad, and particularly for people more our age, we grew up in heaven there. It was just, we had so much. It was before cell phones were much of our life. We were outside till 10 at night. We could come home whenever we had freedom, freedom of our minds. We was creative and fun and playful. And I think, children work so hard now, and there's just this sense of play doesn't seem as pervasive. Everyone's always on their devices,
Right?
divisiveness.
Oh, good one. Yes. And entitlement.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this macrocosmic example of having it all doesn't necessarily bring you peace and happiness.
No, in fact, when I went to Nepal many years ago, I went on a walking trip through Nepal, and they had nothing, but they were so happy, you know?
I have seen that too. It's just in what they created in their lives. Yeah, there is this happiness,
Simplicity is
this
so
joy,
beautiful, right?
simplicity.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Okay. So could you leave us with something, meditation or some kind of breath or something that listeners can do with you? Shall we do something right now or something they can take away and sit with, in their meditation?
Um, let's see. Well, I'll say this. I mentioned the koan. Each branch of the coral embraces the bright moon, right? So in Zen, the moon is sort of like enlightened mind. And it's what we all want. We all want to live in nirvana. We want to live in heaven. We want our minds to be open and bright and shiny. We want to experience all this. And yet this koan is saying, it's not saying the moon embraces the coral. It's saying the coral embraces the moon. So the coral symbolizes the earth, this unenlightened world. The coral is us. The coral is the relative world of this and that, of right and wrong, these lives we live. And the unified, enlightened mind is the mind of unity, where everything is one. But it doesn't say that the moon embraces the coral. It says the coral embraces the moon, which means that we all have this capacity to wake up. We all have the capacity to experience unity and wholeness, to be authentically ourselves. And I think that's so important because we feel unworthy, but each of us has this. We have this ability for insight, for kindness, for compassion, for wholeness, for authenticity. And all it is working at it as much as we would lift weights or clean our homes. It's taking care of our mental body, as you would say.
Right, exactly. And that's what they're not to shamelessly promote, but my mindful mandala cards were about.
Beautiful. I love your cards and I use them.
Oh, do you?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I do too. I know because it's like, okay, I have this part of myself that's bringing me into depression and but I can move out of it.
Yes, exactly. And
Right.
I can look at the conditions that the depression is arising in, and I can address each one of them.
So would you suggest that one of the cure, can I say cure for our present mental state of mind, our mental bodies, is to adopt a meditation practice?
I'd say it could be extraordinarily helpful, but it really to get some stillness in quiet, to get off the phone, to get off the TV, to get outside, to live in our world, to be in our environment, to do these things, to pay attention to birds. I saw this funny meme. It was like, you turn 60 and birds. All of a sudden you love birds, but this is our home, and if we can't sit on a cushion, then go out and listen to the world, to the birds and the trees and the wind, and notice the flowers, notice this beautiful place in which we live that we do not want to lose, and just quiet your inner life, quiet it down, because we all have that wisdom that knows the way out of depression. And my job is to empower people to do this themselves. I don't have any secrets. We all have this ability. We just have to be willing to practice.
You've been listening to my interview with Jacky Fernandez here on Stories. I'm your host, Delia Quigley. You can find Jacky's contact information in this episode's show description. But there's a whole lot more, including a link to the mindful mandala cards that Jacky and I talked about. Check it out on deliaquigley.substack.com. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time.